Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's Guns for Hire. Welcome to the gun shop. What seemed like the epic, dramatic news of the launch for the Xbox One not too long ago at E3 is kind of creeping back. Now, they subdued it with that DRM, and I'm talking about the feature, the digital rights management. For those of you that don't know what it is, like DRM, I'll just pretend I know what it is. Hey, sometimes I forget all these acronyms. It's basically a way to constantly monitor what you own digitally through online. And this DRM and 24-hour check-in. You remember that when they launched, it said every 24 hours you have to have a constant connection to the internet. That was the big thing. And they removed that in terms of the renting and everything like that, because that's actually what stung them. It gave Microsoft a really bad, sting, and of course Sony used that to their advantage in their presentation, basically saying, we're not doing any of that, huzzah, and we're $100 cheaper, and people roared and they cheered. Well, Microsoft did the right thing by removing that. They're like, whoa, okay, all right, you guys aren't ready for this yet. We'll wait for other people to do it, because eventually, you could possibly see Sony doing it as well. Like, listen, maybe they saw it as an advantageous move to not do what Microsoft did to get the numbers up and everything, but they're a corporation. If it makes sense for Microsoft, Sony probably said, oh yeah, we were about to do that. Good thing we didn't. Good thing we waited for Microsoft to do it first. And I mean, we look like the good guys. But this DRM thing is actually still there. Phil Harrison of Microsoft basically said, you know what, all we did was realign the focus. We said, okay, let's get rid of that. Let's concentrate on the launch here, and then we'll get back to the digital management. They basically said that they're still confident. They still had that same vision of that digital management, the DRM and the 24 hours. This still could have an impact. It could creep their way back in. He says it's all still there. They said, well, what about that, what you removed? He's like, well, it's not removed. It's still there. It's basically just dormant. All of that software, all of that integration of checking online every 24 hours, the DRM, in terms of digital, which people are mistakenly, because I did read a comment on the article, and of course that article is, linked to it is in the description below. But they're like, oh, this only has to do with digital, nothing to do with disk, you people, blah, blah. Wrong. DRM with disks also applies. Maybe not necessarily for the actual single player, but definitely going online. And a lot of games require that. There is that connection. If that 24 hours is on, if that DRM is on, it affects everything, including disks. You know what I mean? There's a disk that, you put in a game, it checks for updates. That's why you see an update, like an update is available. Your system knows if you have that disk installed. They know if you have certain games. This doesn't just affect digital, it affects disk-based as well. I just wanted to bring that up because someone was like, you read something like, oh yeah, I read that. You're right, it only says digital. But digital, the DRM applies to everything, whether it's disk-based or actual digitally downloaded content. So this DRM, the fact that it's still there, they still have this same vision. I'm not saying that they're going to go back and say, haha, we're going to start charging people for renting. Because the announcement, they would look like the most evil company in the world, convincing people to buy a product based on certain parameters. Now, originally they had those parameters, and then people were like, well, and they said, no, we're removing them. Which, arguably could have been the reason why people started, okay, you know what, you messed up, but you took it away, I'm going to buy it now. To add those later would cause anarchy with that. I can't really see them doing the full implementation of what they were announcing when they first announced the Xbox One. But definitely some sort of DRM is there. I mean, they're not removing it. Maybe it's just easier not to remove it. But with Phil Harrison actually saying, well, you know what, we just reordered the priority of what we're working on. We still have that vision of the digital future. So I don't know. I have no idea. How would you feel? Here's the question, as an Xbox gamer, or even just as a gamer, you don't have to be an Xbox gamer, just in general. If you were sold on a product, at first you were like, I'm not going to get it, but then they changed it and they said, you know what, we're not going to do that, we're going to do this. And based on that, not maybe in whole, but partly based on that, you made the decision to buy it. And then all of a sudden, a year down the line, maybe it's a year, maybe it's a few months, maybe it's 2 years, maybe it's 3 years, but eventually they go back to that stinger, that thing that turned you off, they were like, whoa, there's no way. How would you feel about that? If you're going to get an Xbox and you buy one, and then a year later, all of a sudden they're like, yeah, by the way, that feature we said that we weren't going to put in it, yeah, we're putting it back in it. It just makes sense. How are you going to feel about that? Suddenly, those features that you didn't want are in there, and you were kind of misled. I could see class action lawsuits happening all over the place. That's why I don't think it'll be to the extreme that, you know, maybe this article is selling it. But it, you know, it sounds like they just kind of put it off of the back burner and said, oh, we won't do this. But it doesn't mean some hybrid or some different way of looking at that, or sliding in and saying, oh, we were not doing this, but we're doing it this way, which is kind of the same thing but packaged differently. I think it'll cause absolute chaos, and it would be a little bit misleading. I'm not sure if Microsoft is that stupid to do that. How do you feel about that?